Hi everyone, this video is gonna be about misogyny. And before I start with the topic and with the book that I read, I want to give a big disclaimer because, as in my position, because I don't consider myself a feminist. I actually disagree with the current feminist movement. I think they just choose to fight easy and stupid fights. So I'm not a feminist. I do think that men and women are equal. Of course, there is misogyny and there has been misogyny, but it's important to recognize it and not to argue on dumb stuff. So for example, just to make it clear, I disagree with the left when they go around saying that if a man explains something to a woman, he's mansplaining. It's ridiculous, to say the least. Or when they blame the patriarchy for whatever misfortune they have. Equally, I am against the right, especially I could say the United States right, because they promote this trophy wife ideal, which is also funny because we're gonna see part of that in this book. But obviously I don't have anything against women that want to have children and that want to stay at home and take care of their husband, their kids, and their house. As long as they don't come to me or other women telling them that that's the only way and the best way a woman can live. So, having said that, if you weren't triggered enough, then you'll be able to listen to what I have to say. So, let's begin. The book that I read, it's called The Daughters of Lilith. It's in Spanish, but obviously I am translating stuff. So when I actually bought it, I didn't know who was Lilith. I have heard the name in a couple of videos, or saw it, but I never actually knew who she was. And if you also don't know, then this is great because we will all learn something. Okay, it's also, the author is Erika Bornay. I think she's Spaniard. And so let's start with what or who is Lilith. Lilith has its origins in the Assyrian Babylonian, and she's relevant in the Judeo-demonology. Lilith was a succubus princess, and it's like these demons, female demons, that seduce men in their dreams, particularly young men and monks. This myth could have been invented as an explanation to sleep paralysis or to wet dreams. And I mean, I found it very funny because it's like, instead of saying it's biological, of course a female demon it's more reasonable. So, well, Lilith, it was first and foremost a seducer. And this seducer, she would devour men when they were in the sleep and when they were alone. Apart from that, she was also portrayed as a malignant being who targets women that are about to give birth and their newborns. And a version of this legend changed in a midrash. So it said that Lilith was the first woman of Adam, and God created her from the dirt, meaning the earth. And this is actually very important because that means that she was created completely independent from Adam, in comparison to Eva, who later on was created from his rib. The couple, as in Lilith and Lilith and Adam, they never got along because Lilith didn't want to give up on her independence. However, what I find particularly funny is that this independence or this argument actually started or in the bedroom because she didn't want to take the position Adam wanted her to take. And basically that blew up and she decided to escape from the Eden, to live in the skies where she could unite with the biggest demons and and give birth to other demons. However, and this is the part where everything gets a little bit weird for me about Lilith, is that here it says that she goes and becomes a partner with the demon and gives birth, but later on it's mentioned that she's sterile. So Lilith was represented as a beautiful naked woman with wings and big breasts, and she could be accompanied by a pair of owls, double-head dragon, and a nest of snakes as a symbol of the evil. However, she had several representations, not just like that, which we will be seeing them. I will be popping them, I guess, in the video. So how Lilith was reduced to, it was to a whore and as a perverse and fake woman, a fake being. One of the reasons religion, in this case the rabbis, adopted the demonic Lilith was to place the blame of everything that was wrong with humanity since their creation. Eva was the mother of all living creatures, therefore she was needed to be used as an example for all the young girls. This tactic wasn't new, since in the ancient times, Pandora was the one to blame, which we will be looking into her a little bit later on. And she also happened to be the first woman from back then. Now, because Eva remained next to Adam, she's obviously portrayed as the faithful one and as the good one. Lilith appears as a rebel and insubordinate because she left her husband. Now, Lilith not only rebelled against Adam, which was the man, but more shockingly, she rebelled against God himself. And this is where most of the hate, I guess, or the dislike for her will go among the people. So Lilith was portrayed as the woman that strangles newborns and children, and this was in order to contrast with the good woman who was Eva. And Eva, of course, was also associated with maternity, which is very important for the entire book. The image of Lilith will have the tail of a snake, or she will be portrayed in a friendly way with a snake. And this parallel to the biblical reptile, this part is foreign to the Judeo tradition. So here it's when it also starts to deviate, I guess. And the reptile is going to be used in different instances as a showcase of the perversion of the woman in novels and in visual arts. This is more like the antecedent, or the facts that we need to know in order to continue. Because at the time, there was a huge sex phobia in the Britain Empire. This is another important thing that I have to mention, and is that most of this art is from England and from France, a little bit also from Germany and Italy, but mostly from the first two. So, in England, there was this phobia for sex, and well, it was also because there was this phenomenon of costumes known as Victorianism, because they wanted to revive the Christian sentiment. So, and because it isn't debatable that when a man and a woman come into union, like before, during, and after this desire of union, they neglect other aspects of their circumstances, which is gonna be one of the main reasons it is so badly seen or looked down upon. Because, I mean, apparently you have to be at 100% 24/7. And so Christianity will reject every manifestation of erotism and make it the biggest sin. And the Platonic tradition also mentions that passions and desires are in conflict with the serenity of the soul, and purity can only be attained by freeing oneself of the necessities of the body. Which, if you think about it, it's funny because real balance comes, like, you have to include the body in it. You cannot just toss it aside. So now we're gonna go a little bit into Christianity in the medieval times. And in those times, the act between a man and a woman outside of marriage was considered worse than to unalive someone. A simple kiss and a desire were sanctioned with severe penalties. The priest of the church would say that marriage was a lesser evil. I mean, obviously, if you want to reproduce and keep humanity alive, you have to go into union. So anyway, according to them, there was an intrinsic evil in the sexual enjoyment. They needed a figure to blame for this desire, and for this desire that men would have. So, of course, it had to be a woman, and that woman was Eva, or Eva. What is funny is that even as in the Genesis, there's no particular emphasis in the guilt, since the punishment only takes place after both Adam and Eva had eaten the forbidden fruit from the tree. But again, the priests of the church needed someone to blame, and I can understand the argument of just going around and sleeping with everyone is not good or healthy, but you shouldn't take it to the extreme that the mere fact of having the union it's evil. And again, you do you, I don't care, but I'm just saying, I think I can understand from where it could have come from. Now, Eva, she wasn't portrayed in that many paintings, but in enough for us to discuss. The reason for this is because everyone would prefer Lilith, since she is the representation of everything that is wrong. Now in this, I'm gonna be placing Levi Durmer and Eva, which he uses her as the symbol of the pagan world, the kingdom of nature and the senses, which will be also known as the femme fatale, because what we just said is like your priority or your goal should be to suppress your senses. Therefore, if you are the symbol of the senses and of nature, you're gonna be part of the problem. And here we can see an Eva which is being too friendly with the snake that, as we have seen, it's also a symbol of evil. She's holding an apple, and she also has her hair covering most of her in order to represent a little bit of like purity, even though it's gonna be a fake one because the snake is there. Ginger is gonna be doing something similar. What he will do in this particular painting, although he did like a series of them, I'm just picking out the most relevant, and also to not make this video huge. It's where Eva is looking at herself in a mirror that the snake is holding. So she's being portrayed as a little bit selfish for admiring her beauty, as dominant, and because I guess also a little bit of vanity, and because she has all these qualities, then she could dominate men. Obviously. This next picture, it's done by Edvard Munch. Don't know how to pronounce it. And this one is actually quite curious because he portrays Adán and Eva in his times, wearing the clothing of those times, and you can see that it has symbolism in it because she's acting like nonchalant while eating the forbidden apple. While in contrast to Adán, that he's keeping his hands on his pockets, kind of reluctant to her actions. On a technical level, I very much like this painting. I think the colors and the lines are quite beautiful. Now we have Felician Robs. He's gonna be quite controversial, so prepare yourself for him. How he's portraying Eva, it's actually in quite an obscene way, because if you can see her, she's naked, but she's also holding 2 apples, and the snake is kinda, it's there as well, and it's not just that the snake is there as a symbol of evil, but it's also the position in which it is there. So it is quite suggestive, and it's gonna be one of the characteristics of Robs. If anything, I would say this is one of his mildest, because you'll see next. Well, not right now, but later on. Okay, so then in England, sex outside marriage was actually punished with 3 months in prison. Adultery could lead to the penalty, and the punishment for humiliation had the population afraid. There was actually one punishment that was insane, because it was showcasing the woman or the man completely naked to the public. So everyone was extremely afraid, and they didn't want to go through that humiliation. And it's something that nowadays we have seen that the more you try to suppress something, the more the other extreme will pop up. This is gonna be something that we're gonna touch in a bit, but I am talking about prostitution. I don't know if I can say that in YouTube, but yes, it's gonna be a huge boom on that market. So, with this whole population being so scared of punishment and being done by the state to them if they disobeyed, and all these I guess, ostracization by the church for even thinking about it, it's what it's gonna lead to the sex phobia. Now, science, it's also gonna enter the picture, and it's not gonna help, because they're gonna highlight the STDs, and it's particularly syphilis, which is the one that we're gonna be seeing in the paintings. And they will also say that love, passion, and masturbation are the cause of all evil. I mean, I cannot not laugh. Now, this belief was because the loss of semen, it was loss of vital energy, and this is not gonna be something that only Christians could believe, but also something that Hindus and ancient Chinese could think as well. So they could say that in order to keep your strength, you should abstain. They would also say, as in all of them men, that a man in love can end up in madness due to women clouding their good judgment. And another statement that they could say quite a lot is that women are incapable of rational thinking. Because, you know, when you are the symbol of nature and senses, obviously you cannot think. 2 plus 2. Okay, now we're gonna see how the depictions of this transgression will always boil down to Eva and Adam, which is the principal sin. So how they would portray these women, it's like, well, the evil of a woman was a secondary essence, which is represented in the biblical reptile. So what we're gonna see is that one comes with the other one, so that you can fully understand their evilness. So sometimes she could be like a seducing, fragile young woman with a snake tail. Other times, as the woman being too friendly with the reptiles, as I have showed before with Lilith, and as how I am showing now with the sculpture. This sculpture doesn't appear in the book, but it appears one, I think it's honestly a different angle, and this one is actually on Notre Dame. Or you know what, I will take a picture of the one in the book and I will place that one. So let's continue. At other times, the woman, then the traditional vices of the men were pride and greed, while the one of the woman was lust. The medieval church glorifies Virgin Mary because she gave birth without a sin, unlike Eva. If only us women could give birth. Can you imagine also the fuss that it could be? Like, then we wouldn't need men. It doesn't even make sense. Not even at the time, and even nowadays, with all these crazy feminism, like everyone would be like, let's destroy men forever now that we can give birth without them. But again, we're talking about the medieval times, so I guess we should give them some, I don't know, how do you say it? To give them some slack. Okay, now it was, all of this will continue until the last decade of the 19th century, where these ideas started being refuted. And we're gonna go to the misogyny. I mean, clearly we have seen some of it, but it's important to showcase the more explicit ways in which they would they would be living in this misogynistic society. So the order of nature is for women to obey men as a wife and a mother. Men and women from good families shouldn't feel any sexual desire. And the funny thing is that women would actually follow this rigid lifestyle, while men wouldn't, because the rules only apply for women. The mission of the wife was to give birth and to educate the children. In contrast, the mission of the whore was to satisfy the physical needs of the man. Men could have the second woman as long as she didn't belong to the same social class. Beautiful, no? Like, you have to be this angelic virgin only for the man to go to the opposite so that he can be satisfied. And who cares about the needs of the woman? But as long as she's the main woman, there shouldn't be a problem. And this leads us to the prostitutes. There is going to be a high number of them at the time, particularly in England. And this prostitute, probably I will have to make these small cuts. I don't think YouTube will accept it. So if you see random cuts on the word, it's because of that. So anyway, this type of woman, I would call it like maybe pros. So the pros was necessary to maintain the order and to avoid a profusion in the moral society. Because instead of have like an equal balanced society, we must have extremes. And nowadays some countries really love their extremes. But let's continue. Now, even though it was seen as something necessary, pros was seen as the women's criminal structure. So you have them as criminals, but you have men, as in men are allowed to go to this criminal society. Anyway, we're in the medieval times. So, well, actually, I think we're now in the Victorian. The pros was the only link between the different social classes. It was, yes, otherwise they wouldn't socialize with one another. So syphilis entered the picture, and there were two judgments that appeared with it: the moral and the woman. The moral, because it was badly seen for men to be having sex outside marriage, and the women, because they were the ones carrying the disease. Even though they would also die, they would suffer the exact same consequences as the men that were having it. But you see, logic doesn't apply. So there were like a couple of paintings that were created, and I will. So anyway, the problem is that it wasn't only the pros, but it was also the sexually liberated woman. Of course, the conclusion they reach is that these women are the moral and physical decay of the men that visited them. Not the man also spreading that disease to the countless of women they were having the union. So it's in the street where the artist and the pros encounter one another, and we will see several paintings done in this matter. Right now we're seeing a Rob's painting, and it showcases how women are seen as the carried of unaliveness. To be honest, even though obviously I don't agree with the message of the painting, I like the ingenuity of it, how it is like a skull wearing a mask as a woman, and then there is a man that is behind her. I personally really like this part that the man is behind her, because it's like the man is still going after her. Yes, it can be because she's wearing this mask, but the man is looking for her nonetheless. We will also be seeing others. The theme of the prose were like, I guess, at a height in the 1970s. They will become quite popular, portraying her without veils and quite crudely, because she is a fallen woman, even though the majority of them are gonna choose, because they are actually not choosing that career, because they are part of the lower class. So, I mean, technically speaking, they are not a fallen woman, but it's how they could label them. And the pre-Raphaelites, which we're gonna see in a moment, it's one of the movements of the artists. They will be especially interested on the topic. Right now, there is like a painting of Rossetti, which is gonna be one of the main artists of this movement. The society would forbid also to paint pubic hair, just so you know. Even among pros, there is gonna be a hierarchy among them, and the cocotte or the courtesan was above all of them, because one would find a bourgeois next to her that would give her legitimacy in that society. However, she must meet a couple of requirements. One is that she must be beautiful, and the second one is that she must have class. Therefore, it was all right to represent her in the visual arts, since she was also related to money and power. And she was even more dangerous than the average prose, or the one of the street, because she was a symbol of the carnal world that existed at the time, or also known as the world of evil. I guess the one that was more accepted, since she was with the upper class. And right now we can see a painting where she's even giving her back to this man. And what is relevant of this painting, it's, well, first that she's also like on the chubby side, I mean, because she has more curves, and which it would go by the hand with voluptuousness, which we're gonna see in a moment. And even more important, the man that is in the picture as well, which is this man with very well dressed, and he even has his tall hat. And the fact that he's also cut by the painting is no coincidence, because I guess it's like a way of saying, you know, it's like having a foot in that world, but not being completely part of it. So yeah, this is an important painting that will be quite famous and popular. However, of course, all of this is quite hypocritical from the society, and because they see prose as the danger of the social and moral society. But again, men are allowed to have this second woman. However, they see them as the abyss where men fall. Obviously, it's not because they go and choose to spend time like in those places like the bordels, or to meet one in the street. Okay, there's an unanimity in the representation of the men with these women as a bourgeois with power. He is the one that uses and exploits these women as merchandise who can easily discard. And we are seeing here another painting of how there are several men, like even in line, or more than in line, I guess, surrounding this naked woman. Because for them, it's nothing but a merchandise. Yet again, it's morally unaccepted for the woman to be in that position. But who is placing her in that position? I mean, again, nothing happens if there are no clients. Now, we're gonna see even a more grotesque painting of this same scenario. This one is from Klinger, and so what we can see is how it's a naked woman, but it's being held by the devil for all these men to see her. And they are like gathering around her in order to have a look at her. So it showcases the pursuit of men to humiliate women by reducing her to a simple merchandise. However, it equally showcases the hypocrisy of men with their grotesque faces and fancy clothing. And how it is also, a quote from the book, like, it's surrounded by the darkness of the night, surges the presence of the demon. Again, because the demon is also represented here. So once again, it's like even in this image, you can see that the woman is forced to be in this position. But everyone else enjoys to see her like that. And on top of that, they blame her from being in that position. I mean, we're still seeing something like that nowadays. Then we're gonna have this other artist, which is Toulouse-Lautrec. Painted, he, unlike others, he painted the prose in a more sincere way, without idealization nor eroticism. And even in this painting, we see them. Oh, because one thing that I have that forgot to mention, that it's also in the other painting, is that the long black sleeves are gonna be like significant, because they are gonna be in most of the paintings in order to showcase the sexuality, I guess, of the women, how they tempt men. In this particular painting, we also see that the woman in who is all covered in a pink dress, she's the boss of this bordel, because women are gonna be the bosses of these bordels, and they are gonna be represented in several styles. So now we're gonna go with a little more misogyny coming from the science, as we have mentioned. They are also gonna say that sex gives you cancer, apart from syphilis, and if you abuse sex, you will die younger. So you should be very afraid of it. And clearly it didn't work at all. Like, not science, not authority, like the state, nor the church. All of them trying to impose a particular way of living to the society only ended up in this like parallel society, or parallel, I don't know how to say it, like parallel world. The woman is gonna be portrayed as, or seen as, kind and compassionate, yet weak, vulnerable, and delicate. They're gonna use the Darwin theories to say that due to this, men should dominate and protect them. Then we have the Mary-Eva dichotomy. Mary is the mother and wife, while Eva is the doom of men. What do you do? The Industrial Revolution, it's gonna push women from the middle and upper class to depend economically from their husbands. And we're gonna see a bunch of new paintings coming in. The decadents, they could portray the woman as a lazy and passive creature. Ennui, which is boredom in French. It's gonna be one of the main topics of the decadence. Also the monk woman, who is the one that is all pure, that takes care of absolutely everyone and everything, and she is the ideal of a woman. She's charming, kind, compassionate, shy, and she's even more fragile than a child and more delicate than a flower. Therefore, she's passive, easily to domesticate, and lacks in intelligence. Beautiful, beautiful to be seen like that. However, as we're gonna see in a moment, women would like to acquire those qualities. In contrast, men are seen as the one with courage, strength, energy, and creativity. Because only men should be the ones allowed to be in the culture circles and in the visual arts circles. Society sees, due to this, is that society will see health and energy as dangerous qualities that only men must possess. So, as we can see, it's like women are being portrayed almost sleeping and quite weak. So that's how femininity will be portrayed as physical weakness to the point of fainting. Invalidism is gonna be a pursuit. It became a cult between women of these classes, which is funny enough because we can still see these attitudes. And I don't mean necessarily the laziness part, but the part where it's, I'm so delicate, I need a man to protect me. Or again, even nowadays you can fall in the other extreme, like, I don't need a man because I am a strong and independent woman. The extremes are never good. But these elegant ladies at the time will aspire to be called invalide, which is invalid in French, and pronounce, and this is also funny, because they will pronounce the last syllable with an elongated accent. And I find this particularly funny. I don't think it's the same, but I can see it nowadays as well with women. I don't say it happens everywhere because I also see it here in Mexico, but the women that speak English, sometimes they do something similar, no? Like, oh my god, it was so funny, and we can still see these attitudes. So it's funny how some of these stereotypes are still in our current society. However, there are gonna be women that will rebel against this pathetic trend. And it's where the new era will start with the Renaissance, that gave the opportunity to have an open a secular discourse, not without certain challenges, but at least the opportunity was there. And it was during this period where women had opportunities in the spheres of power, culture, and even in the army. In France, a group of noble and educated women start a movement in favor of their sex. A lot of works will be created in order to defend her. There is this one man, literally the only man mentioned in the entire book, which is Jean-Antoine Condorcet, which is the only authentic progressist because he fought for the education for both sexes. However, the majority of men will become intimidated by this, and as a counterpoint is where the femme fatale will take its full strength. So it will appear in the visual arts, in the novels. It will be everywhere. And so also the war of the sexes start. men start to listen that women also have is sexual desires, and this is shocking. This is like, what is going on? Like, how is it possible that they also have these desires? And because, let's be honest, let's fear that they will become and behave the same way as men. They don't want that, because you know that it's wrong, and obviously it always comes down that it's okay for me to do it but not for you to do it. And we see that even again nowadays with women acquiring these behaviors of men so that they can be liberated. Okay, women in a forced marriage, which happen for most of them, especially in the upper classes, because at the time marriage was seen as the system and the structure in which families could expand their abundance, their money, their properties, their assets. So they could seek for other women and men of the same status so that it could increase and it be sustained, and they could inherit that to their children. Due to this, obviously, a lot of them, the vast majority of them, they weren't love marriages. So what happened is that women started to dream with a lover as an invasion and as an act of rebellion. There are also gonna be different novels that would portray this. Among them are Madame Bovary and Anna Karenina, a rebellion. You can also say that men, even before that time, and of course during this time, that were in forced marriages, then they would also seek for lovers to escape their own world and to for once do something that they could like. I mean, I think it was the same sentiment from both men and women, but it was seen different perspectives, and again, as I have said, it was like a misogynistic society. However, still some men, they wanted to deny the moral qualities to women. We have one particular man that he was German, and he was also at his peak, I guess, during the Second World War. Well, actually, I think it happened before the Second World War. So you know what kind of mentality it were at the time in Germany, because obviously at the time it wasn't only against Jews; it was against everyone that wasn't an Aryan. So, and obviously women. So this man, Otto Weininger, he will say that women are not. Simple as that. Women are not. Their bodies are missing something, so there's no beauty in it. What would that something be? And then he'll also say that women must stop being a woman and become a man. I mean, how is society, how is humanity gonna remain in this world if that would happen? Imagine all women becoming men. Then, if a woman doesn't want to give birth, then she's dangerous. This will become one of the fundamental traits of the femme fatale. Again, as we have seen, the ideal woman must have children and must take care of them. This War of the Sexes, we can see it in this painting of Oedipus and the Sphinx. The attitude of him and the one of the Sphinx is, it has like a contrast. You can see that he is in the light while she is in the darkness. She's also looking down at him and is mysterious and a little bit unreachable. And you can also see the representation of erotism with the spear, since it's a symbol of the male sexuality. I personally also find funny that we can see once again how he is the one reaching her. Like she's against the wall, but he is the one choosing to go to her. Obviously, you can argue, they could argue, that it's because that's how women lure men. Now we're gonna go with the pre-Raphaelites that I have previously mentioned. They were originally looking for a virtuous and a Christian lifestyle. Their thematics could be from the medieval and religious legends, and after they failed in the creation of the new Christian art, they switched their atmosphere quite a lot, and then they went for the creation of the early images of the femme fatale. Rossetti will be the most relevant in this movement, and well, so at the beginning they were looking to portray innocence, purity, and virginity. Later it became morbid voluptuousness, which we have seen previously in Nana. The flowers represent in this image pain and remorse, but also they represent erotism. Flowers tend to represent the virginity or the lust of it. As in, maybe they will not paint the explicit act, but they will use flowers to suggest that to the audience. The apple in this painting is also there as a representation of the temptation. And well, he's the one that pretty much begins with the femme fatale. Lilith is the one that will become the synonym of femme fatale. Alludes to sex with a cult language that the majority of the public won't realize, and due to this, there was a snob cult around Rossetti and pre-Raphaelitism. So yes, you can. One of the ways Rossetti, I would say, is the one that it's easily to spot, because most of the women that he's gonna portray are red hair, long hair, and you can see the same features in them. It's also because he would use the same model to showcase them. And in this other painting, we can see how she's self-absorbed, looking at her beauty in the mirror, and with a little bit of the ennuyé movement. You also see the flower there, a red flower, and the red ribbon as symbols of the virginity. But one of the things that the public loved and that the snub cult was there, as I just mentioned, but maybe in other words, is because he would showcase the erotism without falling in the vulgarity, and the higher class, they would very much appreciate this of him. And to be honest, I do like I do like his paintings. Are pretty, I mean, especially compared to others, are decent. Now we're gonna go with the symbolists, which was another movement. They want to rebel against the positivism and scientism of the times. The reality of things lies behind appearances. It resides in the internal essence. Their symbols are going to be suggestive, evocative, magical, or mystic. Nature and psyche are going to be key in their aesthetics. Their dual world consists of a higher one, the spirit, and the lower one of the senses, also known as the higher one, the man, the lower one, the woman. For them, the woman dominates the spirit through the body. It's her the one that awakens the animal nature of the man and hinders his fusion with the ideal. Just blame the woman for everything. It's easy peasy anyway. Although she can be a muse, more often than not she becomes a threat. again, especially during this time where the woman is trying to acquire her independence. Symbolists will fear her attractiveness and create a morbid, strange, and perverse concept of the woman. They express themselves through the line, artiste de l'âme, artist of the soul. Their symbols are going to be particularly hair, because it's seen as a seduction, especially if you have long hair. Long, windy hair. Actually, that's why Rossetti good portrays women as with big hair, as in hair. It's not just that it's a red hair. It's a big part of the painting, because it allures to the seduction of the woman. Flowers are also for virginity, but also for menstruation. And jewels. Gustave Moreau is going to be the creator of religious fantasies and mythologies. And due to this, the spectator can't fully understand the piece of the work unless they know about the myth he's showcasing. He tends to showcase women as inaccessible and mysterious beings, equivalent to a non-existence, absent of her surroundings. This is how Moreau negates women. The Art Nouveau, they lack concern for philosophical idealism and individual emotions. It'll become a public style, meaning for decorative and ornamentation purposes. They'll be able to stand for themselves, as in the painting, because again, the other ones are most of the time gonna make reference to a myth, a legend, while the Art Nouveau, it's more like, here it is. Which actually, okay, they have, for them it's gonna be l'art pour l'art, which it's art for art. And their style is gonna be plain forms and colors, and they will ignore the volume, perspective, and contrast of light and darkness, as we can see in this example. And which is also funny, because even though they will use the hair of women as in a big manner, how we have seen before, they use it more to frame the faces more than to allure to something more, compared to the symbolists and the pre-Raphaelites. Then we come the Aztecs and the Decadents. We have seen a little bit of the Decadents already, but because the Aztecs and the Decadents merge a little bit, that's why now we're seeing them together. They are the children of the aristocracy, of the money, the snob, and the decadent, the people who would see love and passion contemptuously. And these artists increase the morbidity and perversion of the SEX transgression. They weren't an organized movement, it was more of a mood state before art and life. And it's because of this that they can merge a little bit. But then the similarities that they have with the other movements is that they could also reject positivism and scientism, in addition to realism. The absence of social commitment and refinement is going to be one of their main topics. Their differences, as I have said with the Decadents, is that they portray the ennui on women. They are tired of the norms. They have an attraction for the abyss and the dead. There is an exploration for the morbid and lethal. They have a faith in beauty, like beauty is truth, beauty, that is all. They will use the femme fatale. They could they could have a rejection for the daily pleasures. There will be perversion in their works. Artificial is going to be better than nature, and it goes beyond objects. It extends to women, obviously. Now we have the aestheticism. Eccentric, it's eccentric, and it develops mostly in England. Versus the decadents are more from France. So anyway, coming back to the aesthetics, the work itself is a differentiator. The relative differences from the relative difference from them as individuals. They are hedonistic. They portray the dandy, which is this pompous man with the tall hat, and they put quite weight on the importance of physical appearance and personal grooming, refined language, and leisurely hobbies. And they try to emulate the aristocratic style, regardless of being part of the middle class. And so there are snobs interested in ancient and exotic civilizations, spiritism, erotism, sometimes it's borderline sadism, and necrophilia. The desires is to impress the upper class. Actually, and here we can see a painting, which I very much liked. I think it's very well done, everything. I'm a fan of this painting. The proportions and the color, the light shadow, the background, it is quite, I mean, it represents very well how a snob they could be, but it is, I don't know, I really find it a beautiful painting. Okay, so now that I have mentioned all these different movements that were the ones portraying women as we have seen, let's take a small recap on what a femme fatale was, or is actually. So she's a dangerously attractive woman, a beauty tainted with perversion. How she tends to be represented is as white with green eyes, long hair, and quite often red hair. In her physical aspect, one can see all the vices, curves, and seductions. They incite to evil due to their coldness, and they have a strong asexuality, a lustful, and feline animal. The feline is going to be also very important in as a symbol, since it's like a symbol of cruelty. So now we're going to talk about Venus. The erotism is passive in her paintings. The male sexual desire comes to the surface when there's a naked, beautiful woman in front of him. And this woman appears to be waiting for the man initiative in some of the paintings. They are also represented as a sexual object, and the woman is a symbol of sex and wickedness, while the man is her slave and victim. And we can see it in this painting because even though we have a main character in the center of it, if you look to the side, there is a woman looking at the audience with a perverse view or eyesight, and she has a man in a leash, an old man in a leash. That's how they would showcase how evil and dominant she is, because for them, wanting freedom to work, to not be tied in the home, it is because they want to be the dominant one. And now we see another version of Venus. Here it's like it's more melancholic. She's lost in thought, removed from the moment, to the point that she also has this ennui element with her crown in her knees, and just kind of daydreaming. And we can see this because the wall can be the representation of what she's thinking about, all the figures in the wall. And then it's also because this is kind of the representation of the German legend Tannhauser, the knight that arrives to Venus Mount and abandons himself in a life of pleasures. And we can see this knight in, I guess, the window. Well, there's its frame in the window. Even though this Burne-Jones, which is a pre-Raphaelite, and because it's also a classical theme, and this version has a little bit of the decadent style, as I have previously mentioned. Now we're gonna talk about Pandora. She was the first woman of the classical mythology. The myth says that Prometheus stole the fire from the Olympus to give it to the humans. Due to this, Zeus grew angry and afraid of the power humans were acquiring, so he decided to order the creation of Pandora. Aphrodite gave her beauty and charms. Hermes places in her heart wickedness and fallacy, and Zeus gives her a box that contains all evils and miseries. Then he sends her as a gift to Epimeteo, who falls for her beauty and marries her. Finally, Pandora opens the box, releasing misfortune over humanity. So as we can see, just like Eva, she had curiosity. And because having curiosity only brings evil to humanity, when a woman does it, that's why she's discouraged to have curiosity and to stay away from the intellectual circles. This is at the time, it's just one of the ways in which they would say the reason why women should always stay far away from everything that is good, apparently. And just like this, and also another thing, if you didn't notice, which probably you have, is that in this Pandora we can easily see that it's the Rossetti style, particularly because of the hair, which is also funny how, well, not funny, it's relevant how he keeps using the hair, the big hair, to showcase her, one of her assets for seduction. And how she's holding the box, it's also, it says a lot, because she's holding it as if their hands were claws, which is one of the ways in which he would portray her as evil, or would showcase the evil of the woman. So how it is portrayed, or how it is written in the New Testament, is that Herod is having a birthday party, and Herodias' daughter dances for him and the guests. And because her dance was so beautiful, is that Herod tells her like that she can ask for whatever she wants to him, up to half of his kingdom, and he could give it to her. Because she is a girl, she doesn't know what to ask, so she goes to her mother, Herodias, and Herodias tells her to say that she wants John the Baptist's head. The reason for this is because Herodias is the second wife of Herod, and John the Baptist had his fair amount of criticism towards this second marriage. Because of this is that the Herodias has this resent towards him. So she uses her daughter as an instrument for vengeance. The daughter, again, because she's a girl, she just goes to Herod and tells him, I want the head in a platter. I want the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And even though Herod doesn't fully want to do that, he feels sorry because of the occasion, and because there are several guests, and because she has love for the daughter of Herodias, he decides to keep his promise, because it could look really bad if he would break his word. Now, this is what happens in the New Testament. However, Flaubert would write a retelling of this story. And to be honest, it's quite disgusting. For me, at least. No, not for me. It's quite disgusting. Flaubert's retelling, it's quite disgusting for me because it goes like this. Herodias organizes the Herod's birthday party, and her plan is to make him fall in love with his daughter. I think Herod is her husband, and she wants him to fall in love with her daughter because she wants the daughter to ask for him for the head of John the Baptist, because he has been criticizing her marriage with Herod because she's the second wife of Herod, because she doesn't want this, she doesn't like it. That's why she concodes all of this plan. And she actually succeeds because the dance of her daughter to Herod and the guests is quite brilliant. And actually it's quite erotic in how Flaubert wrote it. It's very disgusting. I'm not even gonna read it to you. And it's disgusting because she's a girl. But anyway, because she danced really good, Herod asks her, or tells her, that she can ask him whatever she wants, up to half of his kingdom, and she asks for John's head to be served on a platter because she's following her mother's instructions. And in the version of Flaubert, he understands because John has been criticizing his marriage for quite a while, so he doesn't think it too much and he goes ahead with the plan. Now, this is the legend or the myth of Salome, and there are gonna be several representations in different paintings of her. She'll be represented as the pinnacle of all perversions, seductions, and lethal power. As in Salome, even when she was just a girl who was following instructions. So this Moreau, the Moreau gets inspired in the three tales of Flaubert. I hate to pronounce it like French because I feel too uptight. But I guess, I mean, I don't even know, whatever. So that is how Moreau will portray Salome, as this mystic prose. In this painting, we can see her half naked, and the head of John, it's in the air, and you can see blood coming down. Also, the rays that are around the head, these ones are inspired from another retelling, I believe, or poem. I'm not sure, of this Jules Lafort, because he portrayed the story in a more funny way, so that's why he's using those rays around him. Well, of these we will see several of these Salome. We have another inspiration which comes from the For Paintings, which is written by Oscar Wilde. This one was done by Aubrey Bursley. He portrays her again quite evil, because we can see how even her hair turns into horns, and she is holding the head quite close to her face. This is also gonna suggest, because it comes pretty close, to necrophilia. In both stories, Salome is not a passive lost object of Herodes, nor the vengeance instruments of her mother, but an active agent of destruction. That is how these painters are gonna portray her. She's gonna be, I mean, yes, I guess she's gonna be known as the castrating woman, and castrating woman, it's a meaning for a woman that beheads. We can see another painting which also comes, I mean, I could see even closer to the necrophilia, because Salome is actually hugging and kissing the head of John. And in this other painting, she's half naked, and she is getting closer to the head, as if trying to figure out if he's actually dead. Now, this is obviously irrelevant to the point of misogyny, because how it was, the original story completely changed, maybe not completely changed, but the depiction of Salome changed into making her an evil woman, a femme fatale, even though it wasn't the case, because she was a girl and she was following instructions. The story of Judith is of a beautiful widow Hebrew woman who is living at a moment where her people are being conquered, at least momentarily, by the Assyrian soldiers. And all of her countrymen are giving up, because they don't see how victory can happen. Due to this is that she decides to go with her loyal maid towards the Assyrian soldiers, particularly the Assyrian general, and she tries to gain his trust by seducing him and telling him that she is gonna give him secrets of her people. Due to this is that he invites her to his tent, where he would, I mean, in some stories, she would have a sex with him, and then she could fall asleep. In other ones, it's more that he got drunk and fell asleep. Either way, while he was asleep, she decapitates him. Well, she beheads him and takes his head to her people. Actually, I think they even hang the head somewhere so that the Assyrians can see it. And because of this is that the Assyrians didn't know what to do, so they just spread without instructions, and that's how Israel was saved. And to be honest, it's a quite inspiring story of a brave woman. But these painters are just gonna focus on the moment where she commits the crime. So they will use her as a symbol of sadism, vengeance, and femme fatale. I mean, it's as if she even wanted to do that, you know. She did it for her people. But these misogynistic sentiments of the men at the time are showcased in the representation of different women, as we have seen. And here are a couple of the paintings that they created of Judith. I mean, technically speaking, they are actually good paintings, you know. The light and darkness, it's well done, it's quite realistic, and I don't mind the portrayal of that moment. The problem is obviously all the context of the time. That is what an empowering woman looks like. Of course, that's not the case. That we know now, some of us, but again, it's more as in, because a woman seduced a man, even though that man was an evil man, she is the one to blame, because without that woman, that man could haven't fallen. And there is a funny story about Gustav Klimt and his two Judiths, because there is a double moral in the Viennese public, because they renamed Klimt's Judith for Salome. The reason for this is because they knew the original story of Judith, and they found it that it was of bad taste to portray a heroine in such a manner. Even though he actually named the paintings as Judith 1 and Judith 2, and in one of the paintings it's even written there, Judith. But they decided to say that it was an error from the artist, that he just got confused with Salome. So they started calling these paintings as Salome. And I mean, it's funny because it's like that, as in Klimt couldn't have make it more clear that he was indeed portraying Judith, but no one wanted, because no one wanted it to believe that. It's like, oh my god, how are you gonna portray like that Judith? Of course it has to be Salome, a girl. Because the double moral is always amazing and amusing to watch. Obviously it's quite worrisome in general. So Klimt's first version, which is this one, it showcases or portrays more seducer and erotic version of Judith. While the second one, it's more vampiric because of her posture, how skinny she is, and how her hands are also as a claw. You know. So yeah. Another story that I find it hilarious. It's Phyllis. It's it's. I mean, I don't know what to say about it. I mean, as in how to say it, because it's ridiculous, the story. It's about Phyllis and Demophon, which they are married. But the husband goes away, and she decides to stop herself from breathing, you know. And this is because because he wasn't there, like. And after she unalived herself, she converted in an almond tree without leaves. But 5 minutes later, Damophon arrived, and knowing that she had become a tree, he hugs her, and flowers start appearing in the tree. I mean, I think he hugged the tree and the flowers start appearing. That's the original story, which is still hilarious, you know, because it's like he went away for a couple of seconds. Obviously, I don't know the exact time, but it's still ridiculous. But how this Edward Burne-Jones portrays this story is kind of similar. She unalives herself and there's this tree, but when Damophon comes back, she emerges from the tree and hugs him, which is inverse from the original story. And I said that it's like probably it's a better way to portray the insanity of Phyllis, because even in the painting we can see how he is kind of running away from her, like why are you hugging me so hard, you know, like. And I do find it funny. I obviously it's, I mean, even the story itself, it's ridiculous and you can say misogynistic, but the painting, I think it's perfect representation of the Phyllis mentality. Like, you have to stay by my side all the time, because what that is, I mean, if you have noticed how women revolve around males' attention and males' presence in their lives. Now we're gonna go to Cleopatra. She's like the representation of Eros and Thanatos, which means sex and death. Sex is the woman, because she is the symbol of lust. And how she's portrayed here, she's as a femme fatale. she's looking at her lovers being carried away because they are unalived, and by her potions. Because if you don't know, Cleopatra died, well, she ended up her life by taking how do you call it? By taking poison, and it's believed that it's, I mean, poison from a snake. It's not like 100% proved that it was like that, but it's how, yes, it's how it happened. Like the story goes like that. The important part is that she ended up her life due to a poison, or through the means of a poison. And in this picture, we can see a tiger next to her because it's the symbol of rage and cruelty. There is another representation of her by Winter. I personally liked the painting, because, I mean, obviously you can like the paintings, you don't need to agree with the message, but anyway, technically it's a really good painting, and she's representing her as the woman dead, with the symbols of the snake and the toad, which is at the bottom in the background, because these animals were feared by the Egyptians, and all this together gives the message for the imminent danger to get close to a woman, especially one whose sensuality is so cold. I mean, again, obviously it's I don't agree with the misogynistic either culture messages or anything, but I liked one more time the ingenuity of all this symbolism in the painting. One of the worst moments in the visual arts, and even for me to talk about because it's disgusting, is the Beast Woman. Again, we have seen how men could objectify women and reduce her as a merchandise. And here is something similar, trying to represent her as the nature, is that we can see images like this one. And because the main, I guess, dichotomy is that it's man culture versus woman nature. And as we have seen, nature for men, it's the senses, and it's everything that is wrong with the society. So we can see here how the woman is portrayed completely naked, and even as in a tiger's pose or in a feline pose, in order to represent her erotism. Nov contrasts the dignity of the man, which is the purity, versus the angel spirituality of the woman's bestiality. And we can see this in several paintings, the Sphinx, as we saw it almost at the beginning of this presentation. I might put a couple of more paintings. And also, everything reduces to man, spirit, intellect against woman, materialism, nature. This is another painting that I find quite disgusting and horrible, but it represents how these men could feel about women, and it's how in this one, for example, you see all the women naked and in animal poses, while the man is fully dressed, and you could even argue that in a formal dressing, taking note of the behavior of the women. It is very disgusting, to say the least. The Sphinx, it's a rapist and someone that unalives young men. This is one of the representation of the beast women. The emblem of this will be the perverse, the mystery, and the sexuality. Turop will contrast the beast woman with the good woman. but it's the first one, the one that subjugates and enslaves. And we can see it in this painting, or I think it's a grabado. I will look for a translation. And because we can see that the Sphinx, which is what we can see the most, it's this huge head with the claw on the corner. I mean, I will be censoring it, but the breasts that are always very significant in the Sphinx, with a daring look at the audience, while on this side we have a small, delicate woman. It's a way of representing women in general, like even one woman that has these two sides. The potential of being this delicate flower, but chooses, or it's more as in the evil side is the one that always dominates her because it's in her nature. That is pretty much the discourse they used. There are these other ones. Now will be even more misogynistic, since the knight, even though it's kind of asexual, is petting the creature, which looks to have the face of a woman. I mean, we can also infer that because of her hair, her long hair, and it's giving away to her instincts. And this Sphinx is giving away to her instincts because of the facial expression she gets when she's pet. Also, I mean, I don't know if you can fully notice, but you can see how even the knight has some light surrounding him, which could be another way of saying the light being has to deal with this beast. Robs uses humor for the caricature of the devil, who has a big member looking at the woman that is hugging the Sphinx. Even though Robs contrasts the Sphinx and the woman, he still makes them allies. So for Robs, are two different beings, the Sphinx and the woman, which I guess it's a little better. But because they are allies, it's pretty much the same thing. It's like how we saw at the beginning, that the women and the reptiles are allies. That's the same representation. And well, yes, we can see the devil. I find it hilarious, the picture. It's, I mean, again, it's ingenious. Then we have other representation of the Sphinx. One is in the Art Nouveau style. And I found it funny because Erika Bornay found this particular one as bad taste. I thought it was creative enough, but it's because we see the Sphinx in the foreground, and that's five women, well, five heads, turning and looking at the scenery, which is the degradation of men. And she's also holding, or not holding, but she has a bunch of skulls below her as a representation that she is the one that has degraded men to the point of unaliving them. And she's just there watching as if there is nothing else to do, or because she's not even enjoying it. That's why I don't feel it's that much of bad taste. I mean, I think there are other paintings which are much worse than this one, so I don't know. And if you haven't noticed already, there is a crow like framing the heads. There is this other representation of the Sphinx, which is more as all evil and destroying the man. She's evil because she has these huge wings, and her expression is quite determined and even furious in a way. Now let's talk about Medusa. Medusa, she could portrayed she could be portrayed with hair of snakes, sharp claws, and occasionally with wings. They like to portray decapitations, as we have seen, in different moments with different characters, different styles. And it's also, in this particular Medusa, it's repulsive reptiles, as her hair, maybe to symbolize the destruction and evil of the woman's hair. I mean, the Medusa story, I think it's quite common, or more well known than the other ones. Although I didn't know she could be represented with wings, but probably it's because, I mean, the mythology changes, like with the mermaids. I didn't know also that originally they had the head and chest of a woman and the body of a bird. But at some point it changed to become the woman fish that we all know nowadays, and that it's the most popular version of it. Here is a painting of the original mermaids. I find it quite funny how, I mean, I prefer them as a fish. They're more beautiful. This one also, you can see how the long hair is blowing with the wind, which is to make allusion to the seduction that women would use towards men with the hair. And you can see in the background that there is the boat with the fishermen, the sailors, that, or even Ulysses, if this one also makes reference to it, and how she's trying to get their attention. And there are also skulls in this painting to showcase how they are not gonna be her first victims. Mermaids are also well known to lure sailors into the deep ocean with their beauty and beautiful voices. That's why we sometimes see the skulls. Here it's one of the paintings I also very much liked, and this one represents the Ulysses story, which is that he really wanted to hear the voices of the sirens, but he didn't want to end up at the bottom of the ocean. So what he did was to tell all his sailors to put wax in his ears so that they could be safe from them, and that they should tie him to this post so that he wouldn't fall for them. But again, he wanted the experience, and that's why we see this representation with all the mermaids going after him. The story is also that he really wanted to go after the mermaids, but because he was tired, he couldn't, and obviously no one helped him to actually go there. So it was kind of a horrible experience for him, because he couldn't follow his desire, but at the same time, that's the way he survived. He and his men survived the mermaids. And then we have this other version, which is again of Ulysses' story. And here we can see how it appears, the mermaid, the fish type of mermaid. And what is also curious about this other painting is that there are two women, but they have women's body, and they are also trying to get him to follow them. There is a story that I don't remember if it was Ulysses or if it was someone else that was also able to survive the mermaids, and because they survived, because it was Ulysses and someone else, the mermaids decide to stop their lives, which is funny again, because once again we see that if a woman cannot get the man's attention, then she has no purpose in this life. I mean, that's why it's the hilarious part of all of this. Okay, let's go with the vampires. Hera is jealous of the affair of her husband Zeus with Lamia, and she punished her by killing her son. After that, Lamia envies other women's children, and she could kidnap them and suck their blood. In the 1900s or 1900, this is how men could see the new woman, as greedy for lust, power, and money. Who was that woman trying to make her some space in history? This boils down to the fact that they didn't like the fact that they wanted to go to the school, to have a job, to have something to do outside of her home. I mean, it really tells a lot, you know, because it's like, if a woman wants the same things as a man, then you cannot control her. And why does it scare them, as it scares men, is because men don't behave well outside of their homes. So they are afraid that they will follow their same attitudes. It really boils down to that. And well, I will give some of my thoughts at the very end. So we have this painting of Edvard Munch, who would say that women, with her multiple facets, were a mystery for men. A saint, a witch, and an unhappy, abandoned being. This one, actually, I would say it would showcase better with the Phillies and the mermaids that unalive themselves due to the lack of their male. However, he does this painting, and he represents the oppressed and oppressive in this, because she also looks like she's biting his neck. Funny enough, the name of this painting at the beginning was The Kiss, but because some of his friends or painters said that it could have, like, The Vampire would be a better title for the painting, so I believe he changed it, but you can call it both ways. It's still, I also think The Vampire goes better, because you can see a lot of these representations that we have been talking about with her long hair and how it is red, and also because it falls on his head, it makes or it suggests that it's the blood of him after she beat him. Let's go with Orpheus. After his wife dies, he'll focus all his attention in men, and this could make trashes women angry to the point of unaliving him. And they are not just gonna unalive him, they are gonna cut him, all of him. Again, it's ridiculous and funny, the story itself, because it's like, so his wife died and he turns his attention towards men. So that it's like, why would you care? It's like, whatever, there are other men in this world. But obviously, because women need because women need the man they have set their eyes on. This story is quite funny, because who cares? Who cares if a man stops paying attention to you, you know? But obviously, for the purpose of the story and these paintings, it's a big deal for these women, so they go after him, because how dare him to not pay attention to them. So they decide to cut him, and his head ends up floating with his lyre, because he was a musician and a poet, and this will be important for some other paintings that I will showcase. So anyway, his head and lyre end up in the Hebrews waters until Lesbos' homeland, which was the homeland of the lyrical poetry. In this one, we can see how he is being attacked by all these women. It's hilarious, to be honest, even their poses and how annoyed they are at the fact that he has decided to look towards men. And another curious thing is that even the artist himself decided to portray himself as Orpheus. So he has similar features. Now we have these other paintings, which is the same. I mean, the story of him and the lyre. In this one, I would say it's at least less violent, but I mean, they're all right. I mean, obviously the story is the one that I find hilarious. The paintings, as in I don't like them, I don't dislike them. Now let's go with the femme damnée. This is a woman that desires an independent life and is not tied to a marriage nor the desire to bear children. She rejects her fate, so she becomes an astre inutile, which is a useless star, and it's how the poet described the sterile woman. Again, the one and only mission for a woman in this world is to be a mother. And if you don't want that, then you're going against the entire society. And here is how there are two of them, two paintings. The first one is of women that it's their punishment for having given away to their desires. And the second one, it's a mother that unalived her son, and that is her punishment. And you can also see her son as in, or well, the baby in a club at the bottom of her feet. I mean, obviously in that I would agree. If you unalived your son, then you're insane. But it comes down, it's more of the representation, as in if a woman wouldn't want a child, then she could do that for some reason. Like the logic, it's all over the place, obviously, but that's the case. Now, obviously, this is like it boils down to all of these messages, subtexts in the paintings. It's because of the fear of this new woman, the fear of women to actually be part of society far beyond just motherhood. You could argue that maybe they are worried about their jobs because now they will have more competition in all the departments, culture, army, medicine, as we have seen. But at the same time, I would argue that it's that they really don't like the fact that they will stop having their passive woman who they can go at home and who would take care of them. I would say that would be one of the main fears for the men at the time, that how is it possible that someone will stop caring for them as their main priority. So I mean, it's obviously tons of fears, but I would argue that is one of them. So for them, it's women seduces men, then she dominates him, exploits him, just to take him to the abyss and finally end him. Felicien Robes, at this point, I know I should have looked for if he was French. His signature was of provocative blasphemy, and he was really good at it. He was the best at it. I mean, imagine all the fuss at the time. Like, even if now at the age I would think his paintings could trigger some people and could even make this extremist people to ban his paintings. Imagine back then. I mean, I it's just funny to think what would be the reactions of the people at the time. And I will put one of his paintings, probably one of his most controversial ones, because of all the religious elements that are in it. And we also have, let me see if I can actually find that image, because I couldn't find it on the internet, but maybe I can also take the picture directly from the book, because we can see another woman who is seducing a man with the help of a snake, because we can see it go entangle his arm. You know, it's like a an I don't know how to say it, an ally. Yeah, sorry. So to conclude with the fears of the men is that women will be the one that attracts them, persuades, and finally pushes them to the abyss. One other representation. Well, actually, going back to the rock one, you can see. I mean, it's a funny picture. Yeah. Everyone can have their own opinions. It doesn't really matter. But you can see the saint that it's all scared and angry, scared and afraid of the woman, and the woman is actually laughing at his reaction of her body and herself as a whole. You also have the devil laughing at him, and Jesus and the angels on the side as well. Also, I believe the pig was a representation, like to emphasize the nudity of the woman. And I mean, it's quite blasphemous. You cannot argue that. There is this other representation of women showcasing how much they fear her, because in this one, she's the dead herself, and she's in this weird animal that honestly I still don't know what it is, but she has the bat wings, and it's called La Peste, because it's the pest. And you can see, I mean, people being just laying at the floor, and she being, I mean, you can infer that she is the reason why they are unalived. This one is even more extreme, this other painting, or more, I don't know, it's scary. I mean, just see the expression. So women castrate and unalive men when they ought to inspire them. That's what men think. Women castrate the artists, yet they are in all of their paintings. That's what I would say. Like, I mean, if you dislike them so much, then you should have painted men. you could have portrayed men at their best. But did you do that? I don't think so. Munch could see women as an obstacle to his artistic creation. Okay, Joseph Virrey could say that women degrade the culture and the arts. This was when women weren't starting to make themselves like a place in the arts. Several other artists would agree that women are the castrator of artists. Among these ones are Delacroix, Mirbeau, Corot, Delacroix, Courbet, Chasseriau, and Degas. These are the men that would see women as the castrator of artists. This started obviously to become a cliche. You know, it was just like, okay, we have seen it several times for several years. Can you showcase something new? And because of that is that these movements vanished. But as we have seen, the Art Nouveau was kind of making like on the side of it, and it fully it fully entered the picture by giving the graphic arts like a big paper in society, especially in marketing. That's how that's how they decided to use beautiful women to sell products. And here is just one example of it. And this continues to our day. Like, obviously, in a good amount of cases, that's the best way to sell something, to just have a beautiful woman, and it's just like men would buy it. Then, eventually, in the Enlightenment, philosophers will understand that women are equal to human beings. I'm glad that that moment arrived. You can also say that this hate for women came from men who didn't feel masculine enough. And this is like the end of the book, the extended version, or like the details of it. What I would add to this is that you can see how this still nowadays, from both sides, men and women. I mean, women, some, they really live for male attention. Like, if they don't get it, they get all moody and upset about it. And another funny thing that happens, I don't know if you have noticed, but even some women would prefer or would even encourage the current media to portray them as some of these pictures that we saw, because obviously if you behave like a man, then you're empowered, which is one of the big issues that I see in our society. I think it happens around the world, in some countries more than in others. But on one side, women want to be these independent beings that they need no man, and if they can eliminate them, then they would. On the other side, you have these women that love and crave the male attention, and that is the only way they feel validated. Both are wrong. We need men, like it or not, and men need women, like it or not. So it's more about, I think, to be able to see the differences between men and women, and to see how we complement one another. Women, yes, are more compassionate, and it shouldn't be seen down upon it. It's a form of strength. Also, men who have are represented as having the strength and courage, I don't see it wrong for them to want to protect women, as long as they don't want to control them, because there is always this fine line where everything can go to the extreme pretty easily. But yes, anyway, point being is women have been portrayed in hilarious ways due to the hilarious stories, and we can see some of them nowadays from not only men but also women that want to emulate some of these things in a very strange way, but it is happening. I mean, I did mention some of the examples. So yeah, that was it.